it's automotive, it's, you know, if you look across all the sectors, anyone that's got a capital requirement and needs to raise external capital is struggling right now. And those guys will have trouble, and we'll probably see some of them go into Chapter 11. I don't think Nortel's the only guys that are going to go into Chapter 11 over the next 90 days. So I think, you know, there will be some of that carnage, but I don't think it'll be what it was in '01 when you saw just this rapid deterioration and all these companies all of a sudden heading into the ditch. I don't think that's going to happen, but I think you'll see some.
So you're predicting fewer players on the landscape and maybe more reliable players on the landscape left behind?
Yeah, well, I think there are more reliable players today. Okay, I think the folks that went through 2001 are a bit smarter. They didn't get long on debt. They didn't, you know, people have been running much better businesses in our space since '01. You know, in 2001, there was just a pure, let's throw capital at the internet and it's, you know, this thing is going to grow forever, and there's no, you know, it was a business model that was ridiculous. And if you think about where we are today, it's more about, you know, people are looking at making profits. They actually have real shareholders. And I think that's really the difference between today and what was in 2001.
Do you foresee a reduction in headcount in the industry as a result?
Oh, I think you're going to see, yeah, there's going to be reductions. There's going to be efficiencies that are going to be put into place. There's going to be mergers and acquisitions. I mean, I think you will see consolidation coming in that direction. And you know, quite frankly, it's inevitable, and I think some of the smaller players will be acquired by the bigger players, and there'll be pooling of capital done through mergers, I think, and that's going to happen a lot, I think, in the industry over the next probably, I would guess, over the next 3 to 4 quarters.
You mentioned earlier on that video could be a very important factor in the new service provision environment. Excuse me. How does that play out for you personally?
Well, I mean, for us, it's an exciting time. I mean, it's it's sort of interesting because Asia sits with almost no cable television. You know, if you think about it, you think about the United States, you can get cable TV almost anywhere. Asia, there is no cable TV, and the fact that, you know, video will be, and the fact that also TVs are becoming broadband enabled. I mean, LG just announced a week ago that they're coming out with a broadband enabled TV that you'll just plug into the wall and boom, you've got, you know, 6 or 7 video services automatically over the net onto your TV with no work at all, no set-top box, boom, you're there. And I think that will change Asia more than anything else, because I think you'll find in places like Vietnam and China, they won't be buying computers, they'll be buying TVs, and those TVs will have access to content that's going to come over the net, and that'll be the cheapest way to deliver it to those homes. So I think that's where we're going to see video playing a very important role. And I think video is going to be what the internet was to networks in 1995. Video is going to be to the networks in 2008 to 2020. It is the killer app that will fundamentally change how we do networks, because it's the size of the packets are so large, okay, that it just changes and distorts everything that we've been doing for a long time, and that will change how we operate as companies, and it'll make us more interdependent as well, because no one will be able to build a video delivery network that works globally. It just won't happen, and so you're going to have standards and operating agreements between all the various parties to deliver, you know, services from the Europe to the United States and to Asia.
Presumably, as you just said, the sheer expansion in terms of bandwidth demand, represented by a video at the end, makes dimensioning networks, dimensioning the design of networks really difficult to do. Is that something that you have to get involved in naturally?
Yeah, no, I think we're, you know, it's inevitable that we'll have to play in that space. You know, YouTube is here to stay. You know, and YouTube-like applications will continue to be coming into the market. I think we've seen just the beginning of those types of applications, and there's going to be a Chinese version, there's going to be a Japanese version, there's going to be a you know, a Malaysian version, there's going to be an English version, and we're going to have to be able to deal with all of these networks. And I think over the long term, they're actually going to go directly past the intermediaries directly to the telephone companies. Once it becomes such an important portion of their content delivery is the fact that they got to get from point A to point B, I think you'll find that media companies start to play directly in the space as well. I think what we're seeing with, you know, the guys like Google, Microsoft, SoftBank, you know, those types of companies that came into that space in the last 5 years, your next set of media companies are also going to come into this space where they're going to have direct relationships with carriers.
Would you care to outline exactly what collaboration possibilities might exist? You mentioned media companies. Media companies cannot service perhaps backbone networks themselves. They have to depend on people like you and others. But how does the collaboration play out? What would you expect to see? Would you expect to see a sort of more horizontal integration of players or a looser integration of players? How does it work out in this new world of video?
Well, I think the market will dictate that we have to come together. And it won't be that we're merging, but it'll be that we have to cooperate. I mean, your infrastructure, your last mile provider is going to become much more dependent on your international provider and vice versa. That relationship that's always been there is going to become stronger for that set of customers because of the demands of that set of customers. So I think collaboration will go much more back towards the old, what I would call bilateral model of essentially 1953 to 1995. If you think about international services as they ran in those days, I think we're going to head more towards that direction than towards the 1995 to 2001 model of everyone does it themselves. I think that's gone, and I just don't think Wall Street is going to pay a carrier to go out and spend billions of dollars to try and build a global network. I think they're going to look at it and say, all right, how do you play in your niche, and how do you get a return on capital playing in that niche? And so I think it'll be an interesting model, which is going to drive carriers to work very, very closely together. I think we'll be tighter together over the next 5 years than we were over the past 5 years.
So in some ways it's back to the future, only not the traditional telco of the past. It's back to a future of bilaterals and engagement, collaborative engagement.
Yeah, I think the ITU and a lot of these standard setting bodies are going to be in meetings like this with 150 carriers, and you're going to set, the market's going to set the standard from which we operate. But it will set the standard, and it will create, the capital markets will force us into a position where we actually have to operate together over time.
But on a wish list, for the future, what would you, as PACNET, really like to happen? What would accelerate your business as an external factor?
Well, I think we're all dependent on this economy, right? I think the sooner that, and the United States still is the engine around the world, and I think the sooner the U.S. comes back, the better off we're going to be as a company. We sell a lot to American companies, and we want, we want global economic health, right? And that's probably the most important thing for all of us in this industry, not only for our eventual stock listing of the company, but also for our customers and our growth. And I think that it's a lot more fun to be in a growing economy than a rescinding economy. And I think that's, from our perspective, the most important thing. Specifically to the industry, I think these forums continue to be. I think that we do need to collaborate. We need to look at how we do models together, and I think it's changing a lot. And I think you're going to see, things that we're going to announce and the things that we're doing will be much more of a collaborative nature than they have been over the past.
Okay, Bill Barney, CEO of PACNET. Thank you very much. This is Steve McClellan for PTC TV 2009.